Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
Hey, this is Big Chief, and you're listening to the Bourbon Road. You know what I love to pour in my old fashions is a little maple syrup. Can't be just any maple syrup. It has to be from Seldom Seen Farms up in Ohio. He takes bourbon barrels, pours his syrup in there, and ages it for 6 to 9 months, making for some delicious syrup that you could pour on pancakes. You could pour it on waffles, chicken and waffles like this fat guy likes. But seriously, you want to make a delicious cocktail with some maple syrup and not that old simple syrup? Check out seldomseenmaple.com. Pick up some stuff from there today. We'd appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Shannon.
And I'm Mike Hyatt.
This is the Bourbon Road. And today, Mike, we are sitting in StreamYard. Didn't get on the road this time, but we have been spending quite a bit of time on the road lately.
Yeah, if we'd had to get on the road for this whiskey right here, it'd been a hell of a drive for us, Jim. And with gas prices the way they are, it would have ate our piggy bank up.
Yeah, so who do we have on the show with us today?
So we got Jesse Parker, and he is the master blender for Doc Swinsons. Now, if you're in Kentucky, you probably have seen this on the shelf here in Kentucky. Pretty nice whiskey from what everybody else is saying, but heck, we're going to let Jesse tell us about it. Jesse, welcome to the Bourbon Road.
Hey, Jim, Mike, thanks so much for having me on here. I'm excited to be here on another good podcast, tasting some good whiskey.
Absolutely. Well, this is a new one for us. Mike and I haven't had it before, and we appreciate you sharing your whiskey with us. You did send us some samples. You sent us some full bottles as well, so we're in pretty good shape. We're all primed and ready to go. It's great to have a new friend and a new whiskey to drink with them, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to hear you got all the bottles, too. We just want to make sure, you got enough to make sure it's really good.
All right. We're going to do your bourbon. You've got a bourbon you sent us. We're going to do that in the first half. In the second half, we'll drink another one of your expressions, but we kind of like to get straight to that whiskey. So why don't you tell us what we have in our glass first here?
Sure. Let me pour a little more for myself. So this first one is kind of our signature, what we started with, and it's our Doc Swinson's triple cask. And it is a straight bourbon whiskey, a blend of 2 different mash bills, both from MGP, aged a minimum of 5 years, blended together, and then put into ex-cognac casks, Pedro Jimenez, and Oloroso sherry casks.
Man, that's some big names right there. I don't know if I could do all that.
I know all of our labels seem to have that, reflect that. There's like, how do we say this again? And why is there so many names on your bottle? To be fair, we started our branding kind of in-house and have played with it, and yours truly designed the labels. So it's been a unique journey.
So you said 2 different sherry casks and a cognac cask.
Yeah, Oloroso sherry, Pedro Jimenez sherry, and of course cognac. And they're all, for the most part, large format casks. So they're typically 500 to 600 liter for about 95% of them. So it's a little more mellow. The big goal here was to really focus on the fact that it's still a straight bourbon whiskey. And that's what we really like to put our name on here at Doc Swinson's, is we still want to, make sure we honor what the base whiskey actually is, and that's bourbon. So you'll still taste, I think, a lot of that in there. Okay,
well, we'll dive into the details of this whiskey, but for now, Mike, what do you say we take a nose and take a sip?
Yeah.
Well, it's got a really nice nose on it.
Yeah, super sweet. It smells viscous in the glass. A lot of floral notes like roses.
I'm getting a little bit of cherry on this one, Mike. We talked about cherry and bourbon the other day, and I'm getting a little bit on this one. Sort of like cherry Coke.
Very, very beautiful nose, Jesse. It's always nice when a whiskey has a nice nose to it. If the nose doesn't smell good, you don't want to put it in your mouth, right? That's That's what they say anyways. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably the point of having a nose. I feel like sometimes, smell it before you eat it. It might keep you from going down a path you don't want to.
Well, Jim, I'm already drinking on this thing. That first sip had a pow to it, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it's very rich. and that cherry's really coming out for me in that sip. But I'm starting to get a little bit of a little bit of that nutmeg and a little bit of cinnamon on the back end, maybe, because I'm feeling a little bit of the burn. Kind of good one.
Yeah, it's got a little layer to it here and there on that back end, like you said, Jim. That burn's coming in a little bit. Definitely a nice sipper, and it drinks a little bit hotter than 95.8, I think.
Well, I feel like they proofed this one really well. It is rich. It is bold, but it sits on the back of the palate with that nice little cinnamon hug. I like that. But still, that fruit's there. That fruit's up forward, that cherry. I like it. I'm still going to say kind of cherry Coke. I don't know if you've heard that before, but
definitely cherries is a pretty big one. I think most of the bourbons that we use for our base here have a lot of there's a nice darker fruit forward characteristics to it. So yeah, I wouldn't say that's too far out of the ballpark at all. I think you're pretty right on.
Well, we normally skip over the vanilla, just don't even mention it, and caramel, but
it's there.
It's there. It's definitely there.
So Jesse, tell us how Doc Swinson started, and when I look at the label, you said you designed this label, but when I think of Doc Swinson, I don't know why I think Doc Holliday, but I do.
It definitely has kind of that old Western, pre-Prohibition era kind of style to it, and that was very much some of the inspiration was kind of an old medicine label, so to speak. That came out of the 20s or the early turn of the century, or the turn of the century there. It was also what was kind of popular about 7 years ago as far as styling went. So we kind of ran with it. And it was my first good trip down to learning how to use Adobe Illustrator. So like I said, everything here at Doc Swinson is pretty in-house for the most part. And we have a little bit of help on the outside from time to time, but that's really Doc Swinson's. Okay, so Doc Swinson's started kind of as we didn't really initially intend it to become what it has, to be honest. Our parent company, we all got paired together about 7-8 years ago. There's 4 of us, and to do private label product for other groups like grocery store chains and things like that. Our initial intention wasn't to create this our own brand of whiskey, to be honest with you. It just kind of happened over the course of a couple of years. So working with all these different distillers across the world, and primarily, of course, in Kentucky and Indiana and Tennessee, we were able to get our hands on some pretty unique and amazing casks that were quite old. So 5 or so years ago, we started playing with them and doing specialty finishes. And we'd only release like maybe 12 to 40 barrels a year, so something real small. Under the label Doc Swinsons, which really is kind of an ode to where we're from here in the Pacific Northwest. In general, that's where the name came from. It's loosely related to one of the founders of Seattle. But of course, we don't do a whole lot of marketing on that because that's not really our brand. We don't have a grandpappy that did this, that at least that any of us really know of, beyond maybe some old bootlegging back in the day. And it's certainly nobody from a past life's recipe. This is ours, our creation. So more or less Doc Swinson's is kind of a culmination of our chaotic minds put together, and more or not processes developed from my childhood. And I became obsessed with reading books about spirits and wine. So when I was pretty young, and this is kind of what it's turned into.
So Doc Swinson, he's that guy that came through town with the wagon. He's kind of the snake oil salesman, and he's selling the little bottles of elixir that would cure all. And
in a nutshell, yeah. That's kind of the whole idea that was put onto the label and the style, the motif. Absolutely. But to be truly true about it, we are incredibly transparent, and no, it probably won't grow your hair back.
It might grow some hair on your chest, though.
To be fair, my chest has definitely got hair over the years, so maybe it has,
And maybe that in this whiskey right here, that spice that I'm getting, that 21% rye in there, that's got to be playing a factor.
It absolutely is. So we all here really like rye whiskeys. I love rye whiskeys. I love heavy rye or high rye bourbons. They tend to be some of my favorites. I really like the spicy characteristics you get out of it. I think it makes a beautifully complex bourbon. So it's a personal thing for me on that end. And this triple cask, Doc Swinson's triple cask, is actually a blend. It starts as 2 of MGP's high rye mash bills. So they're 36% and they're 21%. So every single one of our releases, with the exception of our single barrels, is either a blend that has been finished, or a single mash bill that has been finished. We don't release anything that we haven't really put our stamp on here. That's what I think really separates us from some of the others out there.
Well, the craft starts, I think, and we've talked about this in previous shows. The craft starts in barrel selection. And choosing what barrels to pick. Then, of course, the craft continues when you start to blend those barrels, and particularly if you're blending multiple mash bills. Mm-hmm. And the craft continues even more as you start to finish those products and watch them age in the additional barrels for the flavoring. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of craft in this bottle from the very get-go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely a labor of love, especially in particular triple cask on this end. This one has me involved in every single step, blending it along the way. Where some of our other expressions, I allow nature to take a little bit more hold on to it, which is unique in its own right as well. And then there's something else that I do a little differently here on triple cask. After I blend all 3 of these casks together, the cognac, and the 2 sherries, they actually marry in old cognac foeders that are about the size of Mini Coopers. Uh-huh. So that really helps put like a really nice mellowing process or mellowness to the bourbon. In addition to how we add our dilution water from about 114 proof to the smoother 95.8.
Oh, is that where the cognac comes in? Is from the foeder?
No. It is truly 3 separate casks, mostly in varying sizes, but like I said, typically they're all larger format casks that held cognac or sherries for 20 plus years. I'm pretty careful about where I get my cask from. I want to know as much about the provenance as I can, and those get blended together and then put into the marrying foeders, where they sit for typically a month, sometimes more, before being bottled.
Jesse, are you the one that came up with the, you said you created the label, so I'm assuming you created the little stamp on there that says bottled when ready.
To be totally fair with you, I don't think I came up with that one. I think our sales guy, Steve, did.
Really?
Yeah, I think he came up with that tagline. He's pretty good at those. So we all have a little bit of us in these labels. I'm the one that just sticks them together for the most part, and then kind of comes up with some of the backstory and the process, of course, on each product.
I mean, I really like that you guys put that on your label, because that's saying, hey, you're not going to rush to do anything. You're going to wait for when the whiskey tells you, hey, I'm ready to be drank.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. That is exactly what we do here. In fact, people always ask me, like, so what is it? Is it 45 days in the barrel? Is it 60 days? Is it 2 years in the barrel? And my answer always simply is the barrel tells me really when it's ready to be pulled. And every one that goes into these blends has a different age time frame on them, based upon how the whiskey is evolving in there. And that is truly how I actually blend the whiskeys. It's not just based on, hey, well, these ones have been there for 45 days. We'll call it finished. We don't just check that box. That's not our style. So we really believe in bottled when ready.
And this is a mixture of 2 different mash bills, as you mentioned, but It's also, you're not using 4-year-old barrels. You're using 5 and 6-year-old barrels. Is that true?
So there is kind of, to some degree, there is a bit of a blend. The youngest we've ever put in this particular product was like 4.8 years old. Sometimes we kind of got to make some whiskey go into the finishing cask, and it's been a little bit harder to find older whiskey these days. I'm sure you're all aware of. But none of it goes into the bottle before it's 5 years old. So it is a continuance for some of them. So it's good range from that mid 4s up towards 6 years, not quite. And then finished for anywhere from typically on a minimum of 3 months up to a year is kind of the spread I'm working with these days. And that's changing, evolving, of course, as we have time and more whiskey.
Well, the texture on this is really nice, Mike. It's kind of got a velvet, kind of a velvet hammer. That's a good way to say it. It kind of hits
velvet hammer.
Yeah,
it hits you on the back of the palate, but it's nice and velvety on the tongue, and It's very enjoyable. Very good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, this is a lot of labor of love has gone into this, and we try and keep a pretty nice consistency between each bottling. But do keep in mind we do have batch numbers on each one of our bottles to emphasize that this process does change or evolve a little bit as time goes on. The goal is always to, if there's something I can improve and I find, I'll try and do that.
You guys are in like 26 states across America right now.
Yeah.
What's a bottle like this average price for something like this go?
So, and this is where my sales guy will probably yell at me through the window or something like that. It's usually around $65, somewhere in there, I think is generally the sweet spot for this. Of course, that depends on what state you're in. But usually around $65 a bottle. And then taxes are a whole nother. We're in Washington here. Is the worst state for liquor taxes. I mean, you might as well add $30 to it.
Wow.
But if I go to California, we could pick this up probably for, I don't know, 55, 60, maybe.
I think that's what it was in.
Yeah.
I saw it at Liquor Barn, and I think that's what it was going for. They actually had, they had your rye there also, and then they had one of your experimentals that had a different price tag on it.
Yeah, those are always incredibly limited. So, and oftentimes they can be older whiskeys as well. So yeah, they usually, making 400 bottles costs a lot more than making 5,000.
Yeah, and is that how big a batch is right now? Is about 5,000 bottles.
They kind of range depending on as the casks are ready. But I think with triple cask we tend to be close to 8,000 bottles per batch or so. And we do keep most of these notes relatively updated on our website, docswhiskey.com. So you literally look up the batch number and find the information attached to it. And they get a little more detailed depending on which product it is, of course.
Well, Jim, I tell you, man, this that cherry is sticking with me, that cherry note. More of a really nice cherry pie. Maybe with a dollop of ice cream that's warmed up. Man, that vanilla ice cream and that warm cherry pie and that crust in a glass. That's what this is right here. It's pretty damn nice, Jesse.
Well, thank you. To be fair, some of this information I got to give to my grandmother, who used to put liqueurs on my ice cream as a kid. So this was kind of the little bit more of the dessert kind of whiskey. You want to hang out with the glass for a while. And
now there is a little bit of a nutty note to this. Is that coming from the barrel finish? Is that coming from the original bourbon? Where's that coming in from?
Absolutely. So you hit that. Pardon, there goes the lights. You hit that nail right on the head. Actually, the Oloroso sherry finish. If you just try our Lamente, which is just that one, which is 1/3 of the one portion of the triple cask, it has quite a nuttiness to it. Actually, it's very citrusy and nutty. So a fair amount of that comes out of the Oloroso sherry finish.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got a long way to go to be able to attribute notes to their sources. I mean, right now, Mike and I are just working really hard to pick out the notes that we can recognize, much less to know, where they're attributed to. So,
hey, just keep drinking whiskey.
Just keep drinking it. That's right. We definitely do our part, don't we, Mike?
We might drink a little bit of whiskey, Jim. Not too much, but maybe 1,000 bottles a year. I don't know. We get around.
Hey, I mean that's awesome that you're doing that though, really, because keep in mind I'm only 31. Even though I've been doing it for 10 years, I'm still learning this every single day. It's absolutely incredible. It's an incredible industry to be in. So,
Jesse,
people like yourselves.
We were talking earlier before we started recording, and people always ask me and Jim, "Hey, what's your favorite bourbon?" And Jim is spot on always, and I want us to always say the same thing is we're always looking for that new thing that we haven't tried that's going to just blow our minds. That's what we're looking for. That's our new favorite right there. And then when we find it and we're like, man, that's spectacular. And I really like this. This is really growing on me. That first punch now, that first initial punch, once you get past that, it really opens up and is a beautiful expression of whiskey. And I think that's why I finished whiskeys, people need to pay attention to them, and they can really get you in a whiskey. If you're new to whiskey and you're having a hard time finding something you like out there, listeners, try something like this right here. If you got $60, try it and you might be surprised.
And, I always say the same thing. Look for the craft in the bottle. So if you're looking at a non-distilling producer who's finishing bourbons or blending bourbons and adding that true craft to the bottle, most of that's going to be available in research. You can find it out on the internet. You can listen to podcasts. You can certainly read labels and look for that craft. Look for the indication of that craft in the bottle. There's just as much great stuff happening from an NDP producer than there is from somebody who's actually making the distillate themselves. So there's an awful lot going on. And I just say, do your research and try some of this stuff. I think you'll be surprised.
I don't disagree. That's an amazing way to go, to be honest. To be fair, I think there's a lot of people forget that blending is a big part of the art, especially in making spirits, out of Europe or Central or South America as well. So I know we sometimes catch a little flack because we're not the base distillers, but think of us like chefs. Usually we don't, usually chefs don't raise their own cows either for their steak.
So Jesse, how did you get started in this business?
Other than a strange fascination when I was a child for all things alcoholic, that's really where it started. My parents were really into brewing beer back in way before I was alive. Just on a home level, really interesting stuff. And then, of course, when I was old enough basically to pack the hop bags, I did it. I brewed a lot of beer as a kid with my family, and then produced liqueurs with my grandma, as I kind of said earlier. We had fruit trees, berries, all sorts of great stuff on a little family kind of farm and in our property. So I think it just really sparked the fascination for processing methods for me, and then realizing what kind of joy you get out of tasting something through, honestly, a lot of patience and attention to detail. So I took a little bit further and was curious how in the world you get spirits, specifically because I liked the liqueurs as a kid. And, as a kid, I wanted sweet, sugary things on ice cream. So I basically just started picking up every book I possibly could about distillation methods and techniques, liqueur production, wine, you name it. And I kind of went down my own path and really wanted to understand one of the coolest industries, I think, on the planet, actually, because it stems into so many different things of our lives that we're really unaware of, and its history. So combining history with manufacturing, with the pure joy of what tasting is, and that's kind of how it all came together. And then when I was in university, the craft distilling movement started kind of taking off. So this was 2011, 12, right in there. And down the street was from my university, there was a apple orchard that put in a still from Vendome, gorgeous still. And I applied because I needed some money, to pay rent, and thinking I would get some great education from whoever maybe they had hired, not realizing that really most of the people that start their own craft distillery often didn't, at least at the time, didn't have much of a background in it. So essentially they handed me the keys, this older couple, they handed me the keys and said, well, we make, 3.4 million pounds of pears and apples a year, and you figure it out. So I got into brandy distillation and applied the techniques that I learned from so many different texts, and also meeting people in the industry to producing brandies. And ultimately led me in the path of blending, which is what I really fell in love with. And that's how I got here.
Who doesn't want to go over grandma's house if she's pouring liquor on your ice cream? Right, Jim?
I think so. Absolutely. I never got the opportunity, but I would belly up for that. No doubt about it. I'm just wondering if we can expect, Grandma Swinson's liqueurs on down the road somewhere.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to introduce it to the marketing team.
That'd be pretty awesome right there.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Or even a grandma's liqueur ice cream.
my
for
God.
adults. That sounds pretty good.
Next life in this arena.
Well, everybody needs a whiskey ice cream, I think.
That's true. That's true. That would be amazing, actually.
Now, what do your parents think? They brewed beer. Your grandma served you, and I don't know if she's still alive. She got to see you do this or not. But what do they think of you? Pretty much running a distillery and blending.
It's kind of funny. Even growing up, my dog's name was Whiskey, so I feel like it was just almost destined. I mean, last name is Parker. It seems to go along with the crowd a little bit. And I know my parents are pretty proud, primarily because I think I could pay my own rent. No, they're incredibly proud and happy that I've been able to take what I essentially just became obsessed with as a kid and learning as much as I possibly can and turn it into a career that I really love. I love the people I work with. They're wonderful support. And then basically following a dream of mine. So I'm sure they're incredibly happy about that. And my grandmother is still alive, and she is aware of what I'm doing. And, I'm sure if she could hear this podcast, she'd be kind of laughing in her chair at the moment. So,
yeah, I would say as a parent, and I'm a parent of some 30 somethings. So I would say that the first thing is keep them out of jail, right? Second thing is, can they pay their rent? At that point, you're doing good as a parent. Anything after that is win-win bonus, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I think I don't know if they could have said that better. I know they would agree with that statement exactly. So I think my parents used to always say, go have a good time. Try to stay out of jail. If you do, though, I'll come pick you up. That's what they used to say. So I got to say they're very supportive of whatever the heck I was getting up to.
Well, Jim, any final thoughts on this, the bourbon?
Well, I can tell you this much. I'm really glad I ended up with a whole bottle of this because I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to drink it. And I'm going to be looking forward to the next expression that comes out of your operation there because it's really good. I mean, from texture to finish to initial impression on the palate was tremendous. Mike, you said it was a big boom boom when you took it.
Yeah.
I think it has an immediate impression on the palate. I think you can taste the influence of the steps you took in making it. You can sort of identify those components a little bit. I need a little bit of help on that, the source of that nutty flavor, but I think, it's all there. I think it's a whole package, and I'm just wondering if you're going to submit this for some competitions.
We have actually, and it's actually done incredibly well. It's taken quite a few double golds and platinums recently, among several very notable competitions, including San Francisco, Ascot, Cigar and Spirits, New York Spirits competition, have all rated this one pretty excellently, which is great because it's one of our core lines. So it's one you should, in theory, be able to find in any of those states that we're distributing it into. And we're finding a lot of feedback, especially once people pick up the bottle and actually give it a try.
Sure.
So that's what we encourage you to do is try something new. You might really like it.
Mike, final notes from you?
Yeah, I really like it as a finished bourbon. It's something a little bit different than other finished bourbons I've had out there. There's not a whole lot of triple cask going on. So I got to commend you on taking the time and doing that and blended it correctly. That first impression was, wow, it's got that spice, that boom to it. But that second sip was just so beautiful and stuff. And I really liked it. I actually poured a second pour and drank that while we were doing that. So hats off to you because I usually don't do 2 pours on a show in the first half. So, well, listeners, stick with us. We'll be right back. Jim, you know what I've really been enjoying lately?
Oh, you're going to tell me.
Some of that Seldom Seen Farms maple syrup that's been aged in bourbon barrels. It is absolutely delicious, not only in a cocktail, but you can cook with it, right?
You can. You absolutely can. Now, Mike, Kevin just sent me a new shipment, so I got a little bit more. And I've been making some beef jerky lately.
Really?
Yeah. Now I know you're the meat master, but I tried my hand at it. I said, I want to make some beef jerky, and I've got a pretty decent beef jerky recipe. and it's got a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of Worcestershire, a little bit of, onion powder, garlic powder, those kind of things. But I always put brown sugar in it. Well, this time Kevin sent me a bottle of his granulated maple sugar.
Wow.
And I decided that I was going to substitute the maple sugar for the brown sugar. Oh, game changer. Let me tell you.
Total game changer. Huh?
Total game changer. Some of the best beef jerky you've ever had. So I'm going to make another batch here in about a week, and I'll be sure to get you some.
Man, that sounds delicious. Vivian took, and we just got an air fryer like most people got these days, right? And she took and soaked fresh pineapple in that maple syrup and then put it in the air fryer, and it kind of crisped up a little bit.
Oh, sounds good.
It was just magically delicious. And people probably wonder why we love it so much. Kevin competed in the Maple Festival last year, 2021, and he was named Grand Champion. That's saying something.
So Seldom Seen Farms, Grand Champion of the 2021 Maple Syrup Festival.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
You're going up against some heavy hitters in maple syrup. And I know we're talking about just the syrup, but that's something to be proud of. Hats off to you, Kevin, for winning that. Kevin's also competing in a couple other competitions. Make sure you check out his website. Check out his social media on Instagram and Facebook. You won't be disappointed. If you want to buy something from him, where can they go, Jim?
You can go to seldomseenmaple.com. And Kevin and his crew, they've got a great website, very easy to navigate. They got all their products on there. You can buy their maple syrup by the bottle. You can buy it by the case. You can buy that sugar. Oh my goodness, Mike, that stuff is so good. And they've got some other gift sets there too. So you definitely want to check it out.
Well, he's also going to be in some distilleries pretty shortly here. Some distilleries that I love and I know you love. He's going to be down at Leaper's Fork. You can find a syrup down there, aged in their barrels. Treaty Oak down in Dripping Spring, Texas. I was just out there. His syrup's going to be there.
Awesome.
And at Garrison Brothers in Texas, if you think you love some maple syrup, make sure you go into Garrison Brothers and pick up a bottle from them also. Kevin appreciated. I know he loves people. You're supporting a local farmer, a local product, a small family. This is no factory place that's putting out maple syrup, right, Jim?
This is a good man doing good work.
Yeah, gotta love it. Well, make sure you check out his site, like Jim said, seldomseenmaple.com. Pick up a bottle today.
All right, listeners, so we are back. We've got Jesse Parker in the house. He's the master blender for Doc Swinsons. In the first half, we got to taste their Alter Ego triple cask bourbon, straight bourbon, finished in sherry and cognac casks. And I think Mike and I both finished that first half with two thumbs up in the air. We both enjoyed it thoroughly. I think we're both pretty glad we have a bottle to sip on after the show is over as well. What do you say, Mike?
Yes, sir. Most definitely. I'm enjoy this. Actually, we'll probably share this with a lot of people. We actually poured a sample for Bruce Russell from Wild Turkey. So I'm interested to hear his thoughts on it.
Me too.
All right. So in the second half, we get to kind of shift a little bit here. We're going into a new expression. We've got your Alter Ego Rye. And this one has a little bit of a rum cask finish on it. So I'd love to get straight to this whiskey as well and have you talk about it while we're checking out the nose.
Certainly. Yeah. So like almost all the whiskeys I release here, I like to put an incredibly complex, almost impossible to follow processing method behind them. So I apologize if it gets this one in particular gets a little bit hard to follow by the way it's produced. Kind of like the triple cask, the Doc Swinson's Solera method, rye whiskey finished in rum casks. We thought it'd be fun to make this one a little bit of an evolution over the last 3 or so years. And we start with 2 mash bills again, both MGP. They're 5+ years old. to start with, and some of them up in 6 now. And we blend those two. It's the 95% rye mash bill and their 51% rye mash bill. So you got a lot more corn. You got corn in that one, right? So it's almost more reminiscent, closer towards a bourbon, a little bit more of those influences in there. And we blend those two together, which creates our Blender's Cut rye whiskey, which we haven't even released yet, but we will. We like walking backwards in our way here. So we take that and we put it in what was our old bourbon casks so the bourbon that was in those casks went into the triple cask that we just tried, that had rum sitting in them for a number of months to years. And that rum is a private blend that we make here. So I also blend that, and it's 4 different nationalities, aged anywhere from 3 to 9 years old, in 3 different types of casks, ranging from American bourbon to sherry and Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez, and in addition, Curacao casks, which has almost the smallest portion of it in it. It's like a fraction of a %, but it has a really nice little bit of,
I was going to say,
bright citrus.
Wouldn't take much of that, would it?
No, not at all. I mean, one cask, I kid you not, over the couple of years we've been doing the Solera method release, I probably used a couple gallons out of that cask, and I have 164 barrels in this process, for the record, the Solera process that the rye goes through. So to back up a little bit, it goes from 2 blends of rye, aged approximately 5 to 6 years old, that are blended and then put in these ex-bourbon casks of ours that had rum sitting in them for a period of time. And then we put the rye in that. And that's in the giant Solera system. So we've got upwards of 3 layers, slowly moving towards 4 and more. And I don't know, do y'all know what a Solera system is?
I think Mike and I know what Solera is, but I'm not so sure 100% of our listeners do.
Sure.
So it might not be a bad idea to sort of break down Solera for them.
Absolutely. So this was inspired by, of course, a lot of sherry producers out of Spain, where there's basically, I think the best way to visually represent this is say that there's a pyramid of barrels and there's a couple layers. So let's just say there's 3 in this instance. There's whiskey, in our case, there's rye whiskey sitting in every single one of these barrels. And we take a small portion, upwards of no more than 20% out of the bottom layer of all the casks, and we blend that together to bottle it. That's going to be the oldest whiskey in the selection. And then we replace that small portion that we removed from the bottom from the layer above it. We take the same amount out that's required to refill the cask below it and put it in the lower casks. And we repeat that process all the way to the top of our pyramid, at which we then add our youngest whiskey into, which in this case is the fresh blend of just the 95% and 51% rye whiskey. We put that in the top. And for our sake, because this is also a rum cask finish, all the casks were bourbon turned into rum. And then now we influence to make sure there's still rum going into the system. We put the rye in a separate set of casks to get the rum characteristic, and then it goes into our Solera. And over time, the idea is we could put a little bit younger whiskey in the top. And as we move our way through the tiers here to bottle this product on the bottom, it creates an incredibly complex fractional blending process that each bottle, some portion of that whiskey went through every single cask along the way. That helps kind of keep some consistency, as well as creating an ever-aging product. So we never empty the casks out completely. So the older product is teaching the younger product.
Yeah. Well, it's fair to say that no matter how many times I hear the Solera process explained, it thoroughly confuses me every time. Because, I mean, the basic understanding here is that you're mixing things and never quite ever emptying things. And at the end of the day, you get the mixture of the old and the new, and all things marry together. So pretty interesting stuff.
I think it's almost something you have to see in person to kind of understand. The first time I had ever seen it, was actually at Iron Root Republic down in Denison, Texas. Those guys are doing some, and they were like, "Hey, this is how it works." And I was like, "Okay, well, now that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense."
It's definitely a visual thing. If you saw it, you're like, "Oh, duh, that's obvious." It's just explaining it in words. I can never seem to figure out the best and shortest way to explain it. But it is a fairly complex process, and it also allows this particular expression to lean a little bit more on how nature primarily affects the last portion of the blend.
I don't know if it's the rum factor in here, but I'm getting a little bit of espresso bean and a little bit of cocoa powder on this for some reason.
One of the rums in particular actually has a lot of espresso characteristic to it.
Yeah, the nose is really good on this. I'm getting kind of Mike, those spiced apples that we talk about from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is more of a spiced pear. So kind of there's a little bit more of a lighter note to it than an apple, kind of like a pear. And yeah, it's they do make spiced pears, don't they? I don't know that I remember, but I would imagine they do.
I've never seen one. The spiced apples are. Jesse's probably like, "What the heck are these spiced apples?
Is this a candy?" I was like, we used to can our own fruit, and pears and apples were certainly amongst them. And the pears we always put cinnamon in with. So I get it. This is exactly what this tastes like. But
there's these.
What you're saying
there's a jar, and they're like sliced apple rings that have been they're not pickled, but they've been canned, and they're
syrup probably.
Spicy syrup.
They're very spicy syrup in there, and I don't even know when you serve it. I don't even know if you can find them anymore.
It's kind of so. Have you ever bought a can of pineapple rings? The actual pineapple rings come in the can, and they're stacked all on top of each other.
Absolutely,
kind of like a little onion ring looking thing. Well, the spiced apples are the same way. Mm-hmm. They come in rings like that. And the juice that's put in the can with them is a hot, spicy juice. So sort of a Christmassy holiday kind of spice. And you serve them during holiday meals. And but anyway, that's what we operate off when we're doing tasting, right? We operate off our memories from childhood, our memories from things that were positive in our lives. And for this, I get a spiced apple, but man, it just leans a little bit more towards a pear for me.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny you say that a lot of tasting comes back to memory. In fact, all these products have a memory for me when I go to blend the whiskeys. This one, in fact, is the exact thing you're describing is something that my mother used to make and can when I was a kid. And in particular, occasionally the spiced pears, would sometimes she didn't get it right, and they'd ferment a little bit. And believe me, my mother saved them all for me. So I know it sounds terrible. They were great parents, for the record. We're not just drinking all day, letting the kids drink, but this is exactly what it reminds me of. In fact, when we're processing this in the back, some of it, we spill a little here and there on the floor, moving the tubes and everything around. And the whole building smells like spiced pears. It's absolutely incredible. So that's I'm glad you picked up on the pear there.
But, I think this drinks just like the nose, though. I mean, it's to me, it's spot on. The pear that Jim was talking about, the espresso bean is in there, that powder, maybe a little bit of cream brulee. Man, this is almost a dessert whiskey to me. Like after dinner whiskey.
Yeah, this is a sweet. I'm not going to quite say it's a candy rye, but it's on its way to become one. I mean, I think give it a little bit more time. I think it would be a sort of a candied rye. But I am getting like some anise, a little bit of that, and also, Mike, those little white figs that you had out on the table yesterday.
Turkey figs.
Turkey figs. I'm getting turkey fig on it too. So
yeah.
Wow. Yep. I think we could continue to talk about this as we sit here and sip on it and find more and more. There's a lot going on.
It definitely keeps evolving and kind of just unfolds on your tongue as you taste it. It's one of my favorite expressions for that reason. Also, I think it's a fairly approachable rye for people that don't necessarily like rye whiskey.
Yeah, I think what might be keeping it from going too far in that candy direction is probably that 51% rye that's in there. That 95.5 has a tendency to go there quickly.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, so I'm texting Bruce Russell right now.
Right on. Oh my
Back
gosh,
and forth.
it's kind of like an honor that I got some of my.
Yeah, and he
product.
actually said he loved the bourbon, and he liked it a bit better than the rye. And I said maybe it was the rum and the rye didn't hit him just right. So
Sure.
he's actually texting back right now. So we'll see. We'll keep the listeners updated what the Russell family thinks about Doc Swinsons.
Oh
that's
man,
that's high praise. That's high praise.
Woo, that is truly an honor. You know, I mean, I'm all the way up here in the Pacific Northwest, but I've had my time in Kentucky too, and met some great people that have been honestly like just wonderful mentors or influence on what I'm doing, because I certainly am not from a bourbon heritage, at least that I know of.
And so he texts back and he says, I actually thought a little water helped the rye to him.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
So a guy that really does know about whiskey and has grown up with it his entire life,
That's
high
incredible.
praise for your bourbon, and said that water would open up your rye.
Oh man, that made my day. You have no idea. I don't think I've ever had feedback or anything from whiskey legends.
Jesse's like, I don't care what YouTube bourbon bullshitters say. Just what Bruce Russell says.
all right, Jesse. Well, gosh. I'm gonna challenge you a little bit here. So we've talked about your bourbon. We've tasted it. We've given you our opinions on it. We've talked about your rye. You've got our opinions plus others.
Okay.
These two bottles are sitting on the shelf here in Kentucky. Our listeners want to know what other states they're available in. I'd love for you to just rattle off what you can.
Oh my gosh, that is, I hate to say it, that is a challenge. I'll probably know. It's like being pulled over and having to say the alphabet backwards. It's never going to happen. California, Texas, Arizona, Washington, New York, I think New Jersey, Connecticut, Michigan, Illinois, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia. I'm sure there's a couple other in there that I'm missing, so I apologize. But I can tell you this: if you ever want to know, go to our website docswhiskey.com, and you can click the bottle finder button, put your zip code in, and it will populate what's near you. And if you can't find it in your state, we do ship to I think 39 other states too. Which you could find that link. It's like a shop now or something on our website. And that'll get you right to all of our specialty expressions and the stuff too, which are in limited supply. So that's a way to get you there.
If you can't get it there, right, Jesse, and your state doesn't allow them to ship, our listeners, all they have to do is find their local senator or representative and write them a letter and say, hey, I want to be able to get whiskey shipped into our state, right?
Absolutely, please. I mean, push it. Why not? I mean, wouldn't you want to get what you want when you can? Yeah. It seriously helps us out.
Mike, I would venture to say that if someone shows up at Bourbon on the Banks this year and they're a roadie, there's a chance there might be a bottle on our table. What do you think?
If it's not all gone. If we still have some, I'll definitely bring a bottle of it. Or heck, we might know somebody that'll hook us up. Who knows? Who knows? I do have a whole bunch of samples. Now, you guys got some other stuff, experimental stuff that is coming out. What else do you have coming down the pike?
Absolutely. So in the name of what we do, we're experimenting all the time. So I work with a number of different casks from all over the world to finish our different our whiskeys in, our blends. Coming down the pike, we're thinking releasing here in early to mid-July is going to be 3 different fortified wine cask finishes. So Tawny Port, finish, Muscatel, and Pinot de Charente, which are all kind of going to be part of their own little series. And then in addition, we've done a couple stranger ones. One of them will start with the least strange, but probably one of the most exciting, which is called Funky Drummer. It's our rye whiskey that's finished in Jamaican rum cask specifically. It's been the one that's been, I know a lot of people are asking for these days. We were trying to release it almost a year ago, and we didn't because we decided it wasn't quite where we wanted it yet. So that one's going to be a big hit. Coming out, probably the two stranger ones, which I'm actually really excited about, is it's the Solera Method rye that we were just tasting last. That was finished in añejo tequila casks, which is it's pretty wild. So rum, tequila, finished rye, and that's got some beautiful notes on it. And there's some pretty exceptional casks that I was able to get my hands on from amazing cooperage as well. And then probably the strangest one, and the one I'm arguably most excited about seeing what people think of, is our Smoke on Water is what it'll be called. And it's very limited. I only did 4 quarter casks. So it's peated Scotch quarter casks that we finished our rye whiskey in as well. And I know a lot of you out there are probably thinking, oh, it's smoky, it's going to be gross or something like that. Trust me, it is. I've so far sent it to a number of people just to get their feedback. And I've had several people say I was just going to give the bottle away until I tried it. So that's a pretty unique one. Because I like peated Scotches a lot.
They can be very beautiful if you understand them. That's what I try to tell people.
Absolutely. The spicy rye, you just got to take your time with them, to be honest. And honestly, the spicy rye that we blend, it's our 2 mash bill blend of rye in the peated quarter casks is nowhere near as peaty or intense as you think it would be. In fact, it's actually relatively fruity with a nice wet smoke backing and a little bit of like roast hatch chili peppers. It's pretty amazing, actually. So,
man, that sounds, to me, it sounds amazing. And I think I have a sample of it upstairs. So Woo! Me and Jim, we're going to have to dig into these, and maybe that's a whole other show, Jim.
Yeah, that could be a whole other show for sure.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, Jesse, where can our listeners find Doc Swinsons online, and where can they find them on social media?
So this is the other side of that test. I'm probably the worst millennial ever, and I'm terrible at social media marketing. So I forget how to do hashtags all the time. I hate to say it. But online, our website simply is docswhiskey.com. And if you happen to have a bottle of ours, there's a QR code on the back. You can always look at it with your phone. And then Instagram is probably one of the best spots, and as well as Facebook, and that's Doc Swinsons. You should be able to find our Instagram and our Facebook through that. So hashtag
awesome.
Doc Swinsons.
Well, Jesse, it's been a pleasure to meet you. A pleasure to have you on the show. We certainly appreciate you sharing your whiskeys with us. I think Mike and I will continue to enjoy these bottles you've provided for some time, and we'll make sure to share them with as many people as possible to introduce them to your product. I think, Mike, a lot of times when we're bowled over by a product, when there's a product we feel pretty positive about, we try to share a little bit with as many people as we can.
Most certain. We like sharing it with Bruce Russell. I think that he's a good guy to share it with. But now, Jesse, you guys, there's this extra bottle that came, right? I don't even know what it's for. Is it for one of our lucky listeners?
I think it's going to be absolutely for one of the lucky listeners.
Well, there's a glass, and there's the bottle of the bourbon and some stickers for one lucky listener. And what you're going to have to do, listeners, what I'm going to tell you to do, right? On the comments on our Instagram post, what we want you to do is go ahead and make sure that you're 21, that you reside in the United States, that you're following Doc Swinson's Whiskey on Instagram. Obviously, you're going to be following us if you're seeing us. But what we want you to do all day long, we want you to tag 3 people. And then we also want you to put hashtag Doc Swinsons. That's what we want you to do. Tag 3 people and also hashtag Doc Swinsons. At the end of the night at 9 o'clock, because I'm an old man, Jim will tell you that, I got to go to sleep at 9 o'clock for some reason. I don't get my daily nap. So tag Doc Swinson's on there, follow them. We're going to give this bottle and a Glencairn from them away to one lucky listener.
Well, Mike, that's a great prize. I think we'll have a lot of people jumping in on that one on the day of the release of this show and in our Instagram post. I really look forward to hearing what our listeners say about their experience with Doc Swinsons once they get to pour it in their glass. So, Jesse, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for spending a little bit of time in the afternoon with us. We certainly appreciate it. We hope we could do this again real soon. And talk about some other expressions that you've got coming out.
Absolutely, Jim. Mike, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on a show like this with y'all, and of course trying the whiskeys. I mean, people such as yourselves and your listeners are the ones who really help keep us rolling out new whiskeys. We're a small company, so it all really helps. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to do another one with you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
So, Mike, where can people find us on the internet?
Well, you can find us almost anywhere. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Our main place you can find us is on Facebook. We got a private Facebook group called the Bourbon Roadies. You want to go ahead and check that out. 3 easy rules to get in the Bourbon Roadies. Are you 21? Do you like bourbon? Because hell, everybody likes bourbon. And do you agree to play nice? Because we don't tolerate any rudeness. Meaning if you drink from the bottom of the shelf like that old 10 high, like I used to like to drink, all the way to the top of the shelf like that George T. Stagg that Jim loves. We want you to be able to come in there, celebrate life, celebrate retirements, births, graduations from high school, college, whatever, even deaths. We want you to celebrate somebody's life. Raise a glass to that person, but just no rudeness. Our moderators will help you on out of our group.
Awesome. So we do 2 shows every week. Every Monday, we do a craft distillery episode. We kind of focus on one expression from a craft distillery, try to shine the light on people doing good work. We'll tell you what we think about that expression, whether or not we think you ought to add that to your bar. And every Wednesday, we'll do a full-length episode like today's with Jesse Parker from Doc Swinson's. We'll spend an hour. We'll break it down into 2 halves. We'll get you to work. We'll get you home. We'll drink a few expressions. We'll have some great conversation. We want to make sure you check out both episodes every single week. And Mike, what can they do to make sure they don't miss one of those?
Well, listeners, you need to scroll on up the top of that app. You need to hit that check sign, that plus sign, that subscribe sign. That app will let you know, hey, these 2 jokers have a show out today. That way, like Jim said, you can get to work, get back listening to us, find out about some great whiskey like Doc Swinson's. Then we need you to scroll on down, hit that 5-star review and some comments, because you know what's going to happen if you don't. The big bad booty daddy of bourbon's going to come to your house dragging a wagon full of this Doc Swinson's. You'll drink all night long. By the end of the night, you're going to leave us that 5-star review, I guarantee. No, seriously, those comments, that 5-star review opens up doors to great distilleries, gets great whiskey in our hands like Doc Swinson's, get great guests on our show like Jesse here. We really do appreciate it.
So Mike and I are very approachable. Mike loves it when you walk up to him in a liquor store. He loves it when he sees you in an airport. Make sure you stop by and tell Mike you enjoy the show. But we're also very approachable on the internet. So if you've got an idea for a show, if you've got an idea for a guest or a bottle, if you've got a small distillery in your hometown that's doing it right, let us know. Hop onto our website, go to the Contact Us page, send us a note. We'll get on top of it. We'll get them on the show. We'll get a bottle from them. We'll let everybody know what we think about it. You can also send us an email. I'm Jim at thebourbonroad.com. He's Mike at thebourbonroad.com. But like we always say, probably the best way, just hit up our DMs on Instagram. I'm JShan63.
I'm Big Bourbon Chief.
And we'll see you down
the Bourbon Road.